Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, the number one source for news, analysis, and discussion on the Detroit Red Wings, the NHL, and all things hockey. Here are your hosts, Ryan Hanna, Brad Crisco, and Evan Lopsinger.
Not that long ago, I made a dumb joke about the Red Wings being the guy with the limes meme, but with good players, and I can't wait for the day we get there. We're getting closer, faster than I think we thought, but I wonder if the Canucks heard that and thought, yes, but with Pettersons.
Dude, there's so many Pettersons on that team.
They doubled down, and then they tripled down.
I made the joke. It's like, JT Miller wasn't traded. He just walked out of Vancouver. He saw there was a third one on the way. He's like, "No, I'm out. That's too much." One was enough for this to be a problem, and two was ridiculous. But three, like this,
that's
is
bullying. That's bullying. That's bullying at that point.
And if there's one thing JT Miller does not suffer, it's bullying in the NHL.
Well, a lot of the bullies can't handle when they get bullied, so it makes sense that he needed to get out of there.
Dude, that guy, like watching the montages of him, and then apparently. You know the clip of the crowd where they're chanting JT Miller? Bo Horvat in an interview not long after let slip that he like kind of hated that. Like that guy is so unhinged, and I think in the most entertaining way. Sucks if you're a Canucks fan for sure, and if you're a Rangers fan, you're horrified. But for the other 30 teams in the league, hysterical to watch. I mean, you love the passion. Keep it up, JT.
The drama this year has been top notch from the NHL.
It has been. Good for them.
Dare I say like a soap opera?
The NHL's stumbling in. If the NHL had any guts, they would say all hockey with some soap opera too. That is free. I just gave you that license, royalty free NHL. I won't even take a commission. If you want to throw me a few percent, that'd be great. But there you go. That's your next ad campaign.
But even when the NHL has an interesting trade, like a star like JT Miller going to Broadway, the NBA just can't let them have their moment.
Oh, I thought those players were commenting on the fact that the Red Wings are on a 5-game win streak. That's why they were going, wow, holy.
Makes sense.
I have never seen a trade happen in sports where the resounding, overwhelming opinion, like initial reaction was, that insider got hacked. There's no way that's real. It does not make any sense.
I didn't find out till 10 minutes ago because I was asleep before the trade broke last night. Hadn't touched my phone all morning, drove the 45 minutes here, got settled in, sat down, looked at you. Wait, what happened in the NBA last night?
Yeah. Well, more importantly, what happened in the NHL last night, which is the Detroit Red Wings started off their road trip with 2 straight wins in Alberta against playoff teams, one of them a cup contender, and they took the 4 points that we said was a requisite for them to walk away happy from this road trip. They're only halfway through it.
Hey, I love what the Calgary Flames are doing this year. Ryan, cup contender though?
Hey man, Dustin Wolf, that dude's
he is sick.
Yeah.
He is so sick. It's not relevant for Red Wings fans that Dustin Wolf is good because he's going to be the comparison for Trey Augustine to a lot of people. The undersized, super talented goalie. Wolf's proving he can do it in the NHL.
And we are recording bright and early after that Calgary game because Evan and I wanted to capitalize on our non-tarnished, fully justified, optimistic episode that we did solo. Evan's already thinking about when that was. It was last episode, pal.
Right.
Yeah. And we're taking advantage of that. So while they're on a 5-game heater, we're going to be recording. Folks, welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, here to talk to you about all things Detroit Red Wings hockey, the world of the NHL, and lots more. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
And I'm Evan.
On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, we're going to be talking about Detroit's 2 games, the Edmonton game where Alex Lyon shut down Connor McDavid, and the Calgary game last night where Detroit wins 3-1. 3 octopi hitting the ice across those 2 games. We're going to be talking about takeaways, some players who are continuing to impress. I mean, we could talk about the same guys every episode, but Johansson, I think, is getting a lot of noise lately for really, really good reason. A standings update where nobody in the wild card race wants to lose, ever, annoyingly, but Detroit is keeping pace. We'll see where they're at there. And then the actual, topic of discussion outside of the trades in the NHL right now is the almost certified salary cap numbers that have come in, and oh my God, are they going to change the calculus of the NHL? Literally. the roster makeup is going to be wildly different. So we're going to talk about why Detroit is in a fantastic position and what they have the opportunity to do. We're going to get into the trades that have happened and more before jumping into overtime. Before all that, two things. First, this show is primarily supported by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/wingedwheel podcast if you want to support the show. Quick run over of the benefits. Talk more about it later. You're automatically entered into all of our giveaways. We give away 2 tickets to every Detroit Red Wings home game going directly to our Patreon supporters. You get access to our bonus overtime episodes, which record right after these main ones. We let loose, have fun. It's a fantastic time, I promise you. And you're given access to our Patreon exclusive Discord. So again, patreon.com/wingedwheel podcast. If you want to join the Dub Dub Club, as Steve Dangle named it back in the day. Detroit versus Edmonton. You watch the first period and you're like, yeah, this is Detroit on first day of travel. And they're playing Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers in Edmonton. And you would have forgiven them for that performance. They went to the first intermission down 2-0. And I think I said something like, you get why they're like this, but if they want to have any hope in this game, they need to execute better. They need to hustle harder. And I essentially was just like, realized I was saying the exact same thing as Todd McClellan says all the time. But they need a little bit of a lucky break here and to capitalize to win it. And they did exactly that.
Every time Rasmussen gets a tip like that, you remember why he was drafted so high, because that was his specialty coming out of junior, the elite net front guy. But good timing, and honestly, it's the randomness in the game of hockey. You could be playing awful. You could be severely outmatched. You get a little cheapy goal like that, and it changes the entire game.
The wins start to end in my mind. It's Alex Lyon. Like the first 2 goals were weird, and probably if the Red Wings had a do-over, including Lyon, those wouldn't go in. So down 2-0 when they felt like they shouldn't really have been. Edmonton controlled play, though, in my mind, and Alex Lyon made, 45 stops, including a massive one on Connor McDavid to open the shootout. Like, that's his win. Even the Detroit did it, absolutely, but that he was the one leading the charge in that win.
I've said it a million times before. The Red Wings of old had every opportunity after going down 2-0 to fold and call it a night and get ready for Calgary. But this new iteration of the Red Wings continues to find ways to stay in games, and they ultimately won it. I mean, Alex Lyon is probably the main reason why he was maybe one of the best games he's played as a Red Wing, which says a lot. But the Red Wings just kept at it and kept in the game and took the goals that they could get and ultimately took it home in a shootout. So it's a fantastic road win for the Detroit Red Wings.
So as Brad alluded to, Michael Rasmussen tips in a Berggren shot, and that made the game 2-1 at a time where Detroit, it's not like they were fighting back then. Like Edmonton was still controlling play, but they had a little bit of a lull. The announcers were talking about on the Canadian broadcast. They were like, yeah, Edmonton seems to just have fallen out of it. They've zoned out for a little bit. And Detroit, part of what Evan just talked about, where Detroit didn't roll over and they came back, is they capitalized on those moments. So quick turnaround play, Rasmussen from Berggren and Soderblom, actually his first assist of the season, that secondary assist, tips in, and that gave him life. And Detroit latched onto that after. They were not like relentless, but the opportunities were starting to flow in. And then you could almost feel that energy come in. Marco Kasper finding Dylan Larkin on that stretch pass. Beautiful stretch bank pass to Spring Larkin. And Larkin in on those breaks, I'm assuming he's scoring those more often than not. Like there's one where he didn't score last night against Calgary, and I was actually a little bit surprised. But fantastic play between Kasper and Larkin.
The severely underutilized bank pass. I love that play when you can time it right. And when
you have to call bank first before you do it.
I heard him yell it. He did.
Yeah,
Don't worry, we're good. I love when Larkin's coming down on the off wing angle on that, because you just assume he's going to snap it over the pad blocker side, because like you said, he's almost automatic with that. So the goalies have to panic and get over. And even if he doesn't get all of it or he calls an audible, that 5-hole's wide open.
Yeah.
It is almost impossible to stop, because you have to guess. And if you guess wrong, you're doomed. And yeah, just a fantastic play all around, especially I think Kasper didn't get enough credit for those. You're a D, you know, those stretch bank passes are not easy to time.
So the game's 2-2, everyone's pumped. And after that, again, Lyon is dialed, making every key save he needs to make. In addition to that, Mo Seider pretty much came into this game like, hey, I literally scored on myself last game. I'm coming into this one and I am not only making up for that, I'm making up for that multiple times over. So he had a puck in the air that was headed, it looked like towards Detroit's net. Like it was a very fast play. So I don't know if it was going to hit the post or the crossbar or whatever, but it looked like it was heading towards Detroit's net, bats it out of the air. And that's part of what sent the game to overtime. Also, while we're talking about defensive plays, we'll talk more about him later, but Johansson, how about Johansson coming back in transition against Connor McDavid, who had speed and the puck on his stick and was trying to make a play? Not like one-on-one with Connor McDavid. Let's not make a mountain out of this, but I think this is still a pretty large hill. What Albert Johansson, who was someone who was poised to be a 41 gamer this season, coming in and out of the third pair, seventh D-man a lot, against the most talented player on the planet. And for a defenseman, textbook, you shut it down, you made the play look boring. Perfect by Johansson.
Yeah, not only shut the play down, but was able to transition it into a clean breakout.
Talk about Johansson. You know what? We're gonna talk about Johansson. In overtime was going back and forth, and in the waning moments of overtime, again, McDavid in the high danger area. You think about that space right in front of the net between the hash marks kind of thing. And the puck is on his stick, and Seider uses his reach and does a little stick check, puck off of his stick again, a very boring looking play, but that means you played defense perfectly, and that's what sent it to the shootout. So I think Mo Seider, we talked about it last episode, Evan. He is a net positive a million miles past the line, even with scoring on his own net. He could do it once every few games and still come out well net positive, but he more than made up for it in this game alone for me. The shootout, defined by the opening shot by Connor McDavid, just stopped by Alex Lyon. After that, I'm like, they're winning. They're winning for sure.
It's, again, miracle's too strong of a word, but anytime you stop Connor McDavid in any capacity where there's a reasonable chance he can score, it's a moment for celebration.
I don't mean this to take away from Lyon, because I do think he was the most important Red Wing that night. Connor McDavid looks off this season, right? He doesn't really look like himself completely.
Yes and no. The word I would use to describe McDavid is he's pacing himself this year. He's leaving a little bit in the tank for playoffs.
Oh, no, I guess Connor McDavid will only be on pace for 120 points this year.
Bum. Absolute bum. That's a man who was hurt before. Like he had one less game of gas than he needed last year, and he's like, never again.
It feels like that episode of The Simpsons, and I know I throw out way too many Simpsons references.
Not enough, Brad. This is a Simpsons podcast.
All right, perfect. I'll lean into it. Remember that episode of The Simpsons where the Yakuza was fighting the Mafia on Homer's front lawn, and that one guy was just standing there menacingly, and Homer's like, I don't want to leave because he's about to do something cool? That's Connor McDavid in the playoffs.
Yeah. Anyways, not against Detroit. Lucas Raymond goes down. Lucas Raymond, who's one of the hottest forwards in the league. I know the NHL released their top 5 lineup based on the highest performing fantasy players, and Raymond wasn't on it. And I get, Pasternak and others have had really good months as well. Raymond had to have been the first guy outside of it. He goes down on the shootout attempt, makes no mistake against Skinner. The next shot for Edmonton, Nugent Hopkins, no go. And then Dylan Larkin buries it, seals it for Detroit. Road Octopus was on the ice again that game. Actually, we should say Road Octopus, that was the first of the 3 that weekend. Detroit wins the most unlikely win of the entire road trip. The first game with travel against the best team they're going to face the entire road trip. Everyone would have forgiven Detroit for taking 1 point or less this game. Instead, it is a straight 2 points. And not only that, Dylan Larkin, I think Max pulled up this stat after. Dylan Larkin was, 24 for 39 on the faceoffs. He took 39 faceoffs and won 24 of them. Prashant pulled this up. It's the second most faceoffs taken by a player in a game in the last 6 years. Talk about clutch.
It's part of a good road game strategy when you can take a high-flying offense that thrives off of rhythm and pace, like the Edmonton Oilers, slow the game down, get a lot of whistles, get a lot of stoppages, kind of muck it out, grind it out. And then when you get those stoppages, you end up with possession of the puck more often than not. It's a perfect way execute on the road in a situation like that. And I mean, you got to have someone who can win 24 faceoffs in a game. So good on Dylan Larkin.
Yeah, it's a good point, Brad. Like, to win against the teams that you're unlikely to win against, it's not going to be a perfect 60 minutes 9 times out of 10 if you manage to squeeze out that win. So however you have to do it. And we find ourselves saying for Todd McLellan's team, they found a way to win quite a bit here, like a season's worth in a month. You notice those 2 games, LA and Edmonton, those are back-to-back wins against former Todd McLellan teams.
The revenge tour is going as planned.
Must have felt nice for him. So that was Detroit's 4th straight win coming into Calgary. Again, not that anyone was hoping for a loss, but coming into Calgary on February 1st, everyone was saying, yeah, well, if they lose this one, who cares? Because they already stole some points from this trip, and it would be very forgivable if they lost to the Calgary Flames, who, aren't as dominant as they were at the start of the season, but still a strong team. Looks like a playoff-bound team. Dustin Wolf is unreal in net. And 3-1 regulation win for Detroit. Not the most high-octane affair from either side, but Detroit locked it down.
Yeah, part of the narrative about why the Red Wings might miss the playoffs and their biggest obstacle is strength of schedule. And we've talked about it. Everybody with half a brain has talked about it relative to their playoff chase. They just took down 2 playoff teams, Calgary included. You'd be forgiven if you didn't realize Calgary was still in a playoff spot. Obviously, as we are painfully aware this morning, Calgary's games start very late.
Yes.
The Eastern Seaboard might not be watching them that closely, understandably so. But they're not a pushover this year. They are not the lottery team that almost everybody expected them to be. So you talk about the Red Wings have to overcome strength of schedule. Well, they just got 4 points from 2 playoff teams, and arguably one of them being the best team in the league.
If I could travel back in time, there's a good chance that I go back, I don't know how many years, to the child version of myself that used to like playing in the West because I liked staying up late to watch games and just beat the hell out of former Ryan. If they ever imply that Detroit might go back to the Western Conference, I am rioting in the NHL front offices in New York.
There's no way we could do it.
The rioting? Oh, we could do it.
Oh, the rioting.
Yeah.
I mean, like the staying up late.
We're going to pick up Brad and throw him through the window like he's a brick.
Perfect.
He's kind of built like one, so.
The Ralph Wiggum Simpsons reference was right there, Ryan.
Brad, it's too early. Detroit wins 3-1. The goal scoring in the first was interesting because Dylan Larkin scored, and I think that was the 3rd most important person on that that score tally because the assist came from Christian Fischer and Dominik Shine, who got his first career NHL point. I thought he shined. I'm sorry, I had to do it once. I thought he was impressive that game in terms of showing what he could bring down the lineup. Evan and I talked about it before last episode, but bringing the energy and getting involved in not just like meaningless plays, but moving the puck forward in that play and making a difference in terms of generating offense. So Dominik Shine gets a secondary assist. Wasn't awarded at first, but they fixed it pretty soon after. And got it to Christian Fischer, who just
turned into Pavel Datsyuk for half a second.
What a pass from the wall. It was unreal.
I had to go back and pause the replay to read the name on the back of the jersey because I saw Christian Fischer in the celebratory pile, and I was like, I didn't know he was on the ice.
Hello?
Who is that?
Patrick Kane came back from injury, but they just didn't have the jersey ready for him, so they gave him. And no offense to Fischer, it's just like you're like, well, that was a very high skill play.
Yeah, through traffic, backhand pass right on Larkin's tape. Insanity.
Larkin scores his 23rd of the year, and then right at the end of the first period was the goal that sealed it for Detroit, funny enough, from Berggren and Soderblom, an all-Swedish goal. Simon Edvinsson rips it past Dustin Wolf, and that made it 2-0 Detroit. Nice. At first, I was like, is that goalie interference? Because it looked like there was some commotion in front, but nope. Just Wolf didn't really get set properly, and Edvinsson made no mistake. He had time to walk in, kind of step on it, and just fired it home.
I want to pause on this goal for a non-Simon Edvinsson related reason. The biggest gripe we have had with the Detroit Red Wings this season is they cannot get secondary scoring. They are extremely reliant on 4 to 5 guys. That's back-to-back games. That line has generated a goal. Berggren and Soderblom assists on both. So if you can get a third line that is now contributing somewhat regularly on the score sheet. I'm not saying that's a game changer for the Red Wings, but it changes the outlook.
Speaking of hustle too, Soderblom, who looked dangerous that game, had a lot of good opportunities, was putting himself in the right spot. Like, he had one that rang off the post. He was playing the kind of way you want him to play, but on that specific goal, he busted his ass down the ice and forced the puck and kept the puck in the zone and set up what was eventually going to be the game-winning goal. And not that, Elmer Soderblom ever had a hustle issue, but you're like the paciness and the ability to kind of hang in deep into a game or deep into a season. For him to put that effort in, it kind of was just like a little moment of, yeah, this guy has really worked on the parts of this game that the Red Wings wanted him to work on. I try not to get too far ahead of ourselves when we talk about these prospects, because this is a really hot streak right now, and eventually things will cool off a little bit, but it really does feel like they're winning in the right ways, and the rookies and the young guys that you want to see the development from are playing the right ways. It's not like the puck keeps just hitting them and going in. Like, you're seeing the things you want to see from them.
They've had multiple heaters within the last month, and it hasn't been driven by the Compers, Copps, Tarasenko's, and with all due respect to them, they've been playing fine. But it's been your superstars at the top of the lineup that are going to be around for another 5, 6, 7, 8 years, which is huge to the rebuild. But then down the lineup, yeah, it's been the Soderbloms, the Berggrens. I know Kasper's been bumped up to the top line, the Johanssons. Obviously, we want the Red Wings to make the playoffs this year. Obviously, we're loving these heaters. But the long-term outlook is still got to be the focus of the team this year. The fact that they are now integrating the Johanssons and the Soderbloms basically mid-season, and they're thriving. Again, it's hard to overstate the significance of that long-term for the Red Wings, because if you are super comfortable with Berggren and Soderblom and Kasper at forward going into opening night next season, and you don't have those quote-unquote rookie concerns with them, you are not scared to bring in Danielson and Mazur. And we're not having this conversation of, can you really bring up all four of these guys at once? Because so many of them are already here and established. You're only talking about one or two.
And Evan will punch you in the mouth if you say it, so, as he promised.
I will never listen to another conversation about how you can have too many rookies or young players in the lineup. The Red Wings this year they have a front seat to watching the young players come in and thrive and be able to hang at the NHL level. So I think this should also give Red Wings fans and management some I don't know if relaxation is the right word, but some belief that they can bring in rookies and that they'll be in the right spot to succeed, because we're watching guys who are kind of floundering early in the year, weren't really finding a great spot in the lineup, obviously weren't producing, a lot of questions about their long-term viability in the NHL, and now it's like these players are hanging at the NHL level. So when you've got a Danielson, a Mazur, an Axel Sandin Pelkka come in, I have no qualms with them coming in sooner rather than later, because I think they're going to be put in the right position immediately.
I want to expand on a few things there, because it's a great point, but there's a couple asterisks to put with that. One is, I don't think we were saying you can have too many rookies at any point.
Well, especially when the players they would be taking the spot in the lineup are the quote unquote duplicates.
Yeah. And we just were always referenced, this is how NHL teams think. So if you think there's going to be 5 rookies on the opening night lineup, I got to tell you, that's not how NHL teams operate, unless you are the 48-point Chicago Blackhawks. And 2, it's not like the Red Wings, and I'm not saying teams should do this, shoehorn them into the lineup just to get rookies up there. They brought them in when they felt they were ready. Soderblom did not have a great year, so they sent him to the AHL, rightfully so. He tore up the AHL this year, so they're like, oh, we got a couple injuries. He's doing really well. This is probably his moment, and it turns out correct. Kasper didn't make the opening night lineup, although I think everybody with common sense would argue he probably could have. But they're like, let him go down there. Circumstances dictated he came up very quickly. He's been excellent ever since. Johansson, they weren't shoehorning him into the lineup every single night. because he wasn't thriving at the beginning of the year. He needed, to watch from the press box, to learn some things, to get acclimated to the pace in the NHL slowly. Now, all of a sudden, it's like, oh, it looks like this guy's got it. Cool. Second pair, playing regularly, ton of minutes. They are putting these guys in the lineup and playing them when they are ready.
Yep.
And that is the most important thing. If they're ready quick, put them in quick. If they need some time, give them some time. So I love the way they've been progressing with this. And it's the first time in a long time, I think we as Red Wings fans can say, the timeline on how they're handling the prospects is damn near perfect.
It's also interesting because they've done it in a very tactful way, right? They could have called up Austin Watson over Dominik Shine, but they signed Dominik Shine to a 2-year contract, bring him up because it seems like they really want Austin Watson mentoring the young guys in Grand Rapids. He just has everything there, and they just love him in that position. So they could have called up anybody else, but they did a very, I don't want to say shrewd move, but it's very rare that you see a guy who's been on your farm team for 10 years almost get a 2-year contract and get called up. They've done some great moves that have paid off very well.
And we'll talk more about Johansson's specific game in a bit. But to Brad's point of like they are bringing guys up when they're ready, there's a big kind of sentiment out there where it's like Johansson just needed the opportunity. And I don't think it's perfectly binary, like one or the other. I think it's a gray area between, because part of it is, I'm sure Johansson with the right opportunity or a different coach, like that's all part of this as well. But I do firmly, unfortunately, agree with Brad that by and large, the Red Wings are now justified and like, this isn't the first case of it, but you leave a guy and you just kind of let him develop when other people are saying Petrie ahead of him or Hall ahead of him. Like it sucks. And it did, and it does. But at the same time, I think if let's say the Petrie injury happened right at the start of the year and Johansson stepped in with Edvinsson, I don't know that I would bet a lot of money actually that I don't have that he wouldn't have performed as well as he did now. So it's all part of it. Anyways, the game goes to 2-1 in the third period, thanks to a power play goal from Nazem Kadri. But beyond that, it was never really anything other than Talbot performing a fantastically. Andrew Copp is awarded an empty net goal. Tarasenko did a good job to break up a play. DeBrincat got the puck down the ice. Copp gets his 10th, and the Red Wings win 3-1. They beat Dustin Wolf, Edvinsson game winner, and that is 4 points of a possible 4 to start out the toughest leg of the road trip.
Next up, a gaggle of Pettersons.
So many Pettersons. Since we started recording this podcast, another 3 Pettersons have been traded for.
They only did it to make the film review more difficult for the opposing teams.
Can you imagine another one was like it was like an Eric Pettersson?
My brain's only prepared for 3 at this time of the morning.
I want to know the nicknames because we know they call number 40 Elias Pettersson, the forward, Petey. And then everybody in the Vancouver circles was saying, I guess the new guy's nickname was D Petey.
Again.
Amazing. Now, if they don't call Marcus
What's
Pettersson...
the D for?
Don't. No.
We're not talking about the birds and the bees today, Evan.
Not until at least 8 a.m.
Yeah, we got 4 minutes left.
If they don't call Marcus PD3, I don't even know what we're doing here.
3 PD or PD3?
Well, no, 3 PD implies the Canucks have ever won anything.
P3D.
I hate both of you so much.
So as Brad said, we're recording this episode on Sunday, but before the Red Wings face off against the Vancouver Canucks at 8 p.m. Eastern. So we took advantage. There's a 5-game win streak. We are not going to get greedy. We're recording now. We'll be back with you on Wednesday. And by that point, the Vancouver game will have been played and the Seattle game will have been played. And I'm just saying, if they lose the Vancouver game, we will not feel bad about these good vibes because you lose 1 game out of 3 against Edmonton, Calgary, Vancouver. We would have the exact same positive vibes on the episode. And if they win, then, I mean, we'll be back to talk about a 6th win, maybe a 7th. So we'll see. So that's Detroit's game review. There's going to be plenty more to come, especially on Johansson, the salary cap. But first, a word from the sponsors of the Wing to Go podcast. Back after this. Welcome back. I need to say this before moving on. I love that everyone understood the assignment when the second octopus hit the ice in Calgary in one game. The amount of people that just posted the "Sir, a second blank has hit the blank" meme right underneath it. I was like, yeah, that's what we were all thinking.
There's not an ocean close to Calgary, so kudos to the person who was able to secure an octopus.
That's crazy because you made your fortune selling beachfront property in Calgary and Edmonton.
Oh yeah. Photoshop's a beautiful toy.
Do you know how to use it?
No.
No, you just
No,
you pay a
someone does.
You pay a wage slave to do it.
Yes.
That's great. I mean, pay is a generous word. Okay. So the Red Wings were thrilled. We talked a lot about, how people are contributing to these wins. And I mean it when I say these aren't I don't feel like these are fluky wins like he might have had earlier in the season, but the extended discussion on Albert Johansson, I think, is justified. Trent Yanni had a great piece talking at intermission yesterday about, how it's unfortunate for Petrie with his injury, but with that, you get opportunities to kind of step up. And he talked about different kind of phases of his career as a coach on different teams where he put guys together and they thrived. Like they had these deep pairings that were not all of them iconic, but they stuck together. And if you've been watching hockey long enough, if two guys stick together for a long time, it means because they're meshing. And he loves what he's seeing from Edvinsson, who is a rising star, if not already a star in this league, and Johansson, who has seized the moment. So with Johansson, has this rewritten what you think about his game and what he's capable of, and not even just in the short term, but how he could be a fixture in the Red Wings long term?
Yes and no. I don't think, if you want to call it the scouting report on Johansson, has changed at all. We've known,
because people in Grand Rapids will tell you they've known this all along.
Yeah. And even his draft profile, he's not big for a defenseman. He's not a bad skater, but he's not an elite skater for a defenseman. Good hands, not elite.
Can I interject for a second? He is a good skater, and he is just not he's not like Quinn Hughes, Cale Makar.
Well, you need to define what skating means, right? It's is he fast? Is he slow? Is he good east-west? Is he good on his edges? Skating is
He's a very technically sound, well-rounded skater. Very smooth, very fluid, very efficient. Not a super powerful skater. He's not going to win a ton of one-on-one races against good forwards. And again, good hands, not a good shot relative to a lot of defense in the NHL. The MO for him was always his brain. He's got to come into the NHL, be super efficient, super smart, good decisions with the puck, good gaps, good positioning, because he can't out physical anybody. His traits are not going to be enough to dominate anybody in the NHL. I'm not saying he's Nick Lidstrom, but it's that type of defenseman where that is how he succeeds. And that is exactly what we're seeing from him. Now you can argue, did we expect this level of this from him this quickly? Absolutely not. So now the ceiling may have shifted to maybe he is a second pair D. And can't say maybe, he's actively doing it on a good NHL team right now. So would he be doing that without Edvinsson next to him? No, of course not. I don't think any of us are disillusioned to think if the second pair was him and Sherratt, this would be happening. But he's efficient. He's smart, making good decisions with the puck, making good reads positionally, controlling his gap well, which is what we saw perfectly on that McDavid play you were talking about. This is how he wins, and he's doing it exceptionally well for his rookie season.
It is a dying breed in the NHL, a league that is defined fairly so by the elite traits and the players who often give up something on their end of the ice to bring it in the offensive zone or vice versa. But a guy who is just composed of a lot of really good talents, but it's how he puts it all together within himself, greater than the sum of his own parts, to bring my own trope to a new level. Like that, I have so much admiration for players who could do that, because it's that is true ability, that is true talent, and it's also true grind, because he has Brad's right, he has no physical backstop like Seider or Edvinsson do. If they get beat, we saw Seider or with his stick break up the Farabee play. We see him 10 times a game, those two use their stick and their reach to either dominate a guy or break up a play. He can't fall back on that. So he needs to be technically perfect to stop a Connor McDavid. He needs to be technically perfect to make sure he doesn't give something up on his end of the ice, especially if Edvinsson, is deep in the offensive zone. Is he going to stick on the second pair forever? Maybe, maybe not. Depends on who Detroit gets. Does Detroit potentially now have a steadying force that can be on the second pair and do great, or really excellent on the third pair? Or maybe they need someone to step up for a few moments on the first pair if there's an injury. I think they have that likely here in Johansson as long as he keeps progressing.
Well, there's no easy games for him, right? He can't just rely on blowing guys up or being a prick in his own end to just play a defensive game. Like, he has to be on every single game. Otherwise, he will get torched by the opponents.
One thing that I don't think we've talked about in a potential Johansson future, because everybody always gets hung up. Is this guy a first pair guy? Is this a second pair guy? Is this a third pair guy? What he could be is, we've talked a lot of forwards in this context, and it's not applied to defenses often because there's only 6 of them. He could be your plug and play guy. Is there anywhere below Mo Seider in this D group or going forward where you could plug Johansson in and don't think he'd be all right? You need someone to spot fill next to Seider for a couple games. Could he do it? Probably. Could he be a regular second pair guy? Probably. When he's close to his peak, do you think he could carry a very good third pair? Probably. So you build the defense around him and go, where do we need him to play? And you put him there.
I am excited to watch him continue. And as always, there's going to be a disclaimer. There's going to be a cooling off at some point here where the entire team, and by virtue all of the rookies, are going to, not look as hot as they've been right now. Talbot in line might not be saving games or at least, showing dominant performances. But I think what we've seen so far is not a flash in the pan. It's something that they can build on. Before we jump into the NHL news that has everyone talking, which is the salary cap, actually some of the NHL news, Sebastian Cossa just waiting like a true certified sicko wanting that fight. Oh, I need Sebastian Cossa in a goalie fight in the NHL like I wanted Ned to score a goalie goal for the Red Wings in the NHL.
I think your odds of getting it are probably a little higher.
Pretty high, yeah.
Feels inevitable. Again,
let's bring Mike Smith back.
to fight Cossa or to mentor him. Either way, I'm good.
Both. Your training is ready. Anyways, that was fun to see. Okay, the NHL. Let's jump into NHL news now here. We've been talking for a while. Actually, if you go back to our Good in the Room episode with Max, I believe it was in December, November. God, I'm terrible at time. We had a whole segment. Max's Good in the Room segment was talking about the salary cap and the uniquely strong position the Red Wings are in because of the timing of their core deals. Has that ever been amplified even more so than it already is? Because the NHL is currently moving towards a salary cap projection of the following for the next 3 seasons. 2025, 2026, $95.5 million. 2026, 2027, $104 million. 2027, 2028, $113.5 million. That is a smoothed out projection. That is taking some off the top and spreading it out because the revenues went up so much this year. Players are done paying escrow for the year.
That was the big indicator to me that the salary cap projections, and they indicated that these were very conservative numbers for the salary cap projections. Like, they could potentially be even more than this. That was my first indicator that before they announced the salary cap projections that they were going to be big.
And the current salary cap for reference is $88 million. And we just went through the COVID era where it stayed flat. So you are going to see a colossal jump. Some perspective here. We were doing some math back and forth in the chat, and there are like the equivalent of what was a $10 million contract back in the day is now nearly $13 million. If I got my numbers right here, like the way you think about numbers and how much a player should be paid It is, if it wasn't already thrown out the window, it absolutely should be thrown out the window. Like, it is absolutely absurd how much this thing is going to jump.
The Red Wings MVP over the next few seasons might be Chris Ilitch if things go well.
No,
because
a lot of people are going to be surprised by that.
Well, the one thing that I was hearing a lot when this news broke was there's a lot of teams that are worried because they literally can't afford to go to the cap in these years. Like, it's not going to be a parity league anymore because a lot of the smaller market revenue teams will not be able to spend up to 113 mil, which will once again give markets like
Winnipeg Jets,
hopefully Detroit, a huge advantage over a lot of these other teams because they can spend to the cap.
I can't believe I'm sitting here in this room right now and you guys are talking about disparity because of the salary cap. I cannot believe after 10 years we're having this conversation.
I'm honestly surprised you're awake.
I'm disgusted at both of you.
I'm not saying that this is good or bad. I'm saying this is what I'm hearing. And I understand, even in a non-salary cap world, it was a huge advantage for the Red Wings. I understand for the Detroit Red Wings, it's better when you can spend. Is it better for the league as a whole? That's a whole nother debate. But here's the thing, and again, to relate this back to the Red Wings, if Chris Ilitch is willing to spend to the cap, that gives the Red Wings an advantage over, I don't know how many, but a bunch of teams in the NHL now. You factor that in, combined with the fact that the Red Wings, under what we thought were going to be reasonable cap rises, Larkin's incredible deal, Seider's incredible deal, Raymond's incredible deal, they are in arguably the best position in the NHL because they have their core of what now looks like legitimate star to superstar level players locked up almost max term from this announcement, what is now going to be considered downright cheap. Sherratt, Copp, Hall, Petrie. They have a lot of these dead weight contracts coming off the book in the next year or two. And for maybe the first time in the history of the NHL, some legitimate superstar players might actually hit the market in unrestricted free agency. The Red Wings are in such good position right now. I'm not saying they could or should do this, but I'm saying if they wanted to go give $30 million to Mitch Marner and Mikko Rantanen this summer, they could.
Would that be a discount?
Yeah. Like, they want to give those guys $15 million each. They can do it. I would argue they should do it. And it won't be that big of an impact on their cap. Like, obviously, $30 million is a huge impact. But I'm saying they would not have to make a ton of secondary moves to make that feasible.
Lucas Raymond makes $8.075 a year. There's a good chance the plus value on that contract is $4 million a year or greater.
Could be all right. It could be right now.
Yes.
As of opening day next season, if Raymond finishes this season the way he's going, you could argue that's the best contract in the NHL behind Cale Makar.
Certainly up there.
Like, factoring in the term left on it, he probably trumps Makar.
The teams who are going to benefit the most from this are the teams that have their quote unquote core players locked up 6, 7, 8 years. We talk about, disparity as the salary cap goes up, which I'm not crying for any of the billionaires, but there's not really any team in the Atlantic Division that will not be able to spend to the cap. Like, the Leafs could spend to the cap if it was $1 billion.
The Leafs could spend to the cap for 4 teams comfortably.
I mean,
with revenue sharing, they would probably argue
they probably are.
But you say that, but I'm curious because Buffalo didn't this year.
Buffalo's the one team out of the division I think they could,
and it's hard.
But I don't think they can't. Like, they will.
It's hard for the Pagulas because they must not make that much money off the Buffalo Bills, right? So it's hard for them.
Weird. It is.
Give me a break.
But
table
with Anlauer, I don't know if Ottawa will go to the cap. And here's the other one that I'm not sure of. If you're the Boston Bruins about to enter a rebuild.
But that's a hockey decision, not the
Bruins could afford it, but the Red Wings might only have to go up against 5, maybe 6 cap teams in their division. And again, the Red Wings have their core players locked up for longer and cheaper than these other teams. Now, I'm not saying because of this, they're going to immediately be better than the Leafs or the Panthers. I understand that the quality of player does matter, but the opportunity to completely retool this franchise in what's already going exceptionally well, when you look at how good Larkin, Raymond, Seider, Edvinsson, Kasper, etc., you can now take heavy swings at a Rantanen, at a Marner. You want to go make a big trade, you can do it. You have the assets. All these deadweight contracts that you look at and go, they're a problem. All of a sudden, the buyout calculator on them gets so much cheaper because I only have to stomach $2 million this year, cap's going up 11 mil. Who cares? Right?
Mhm.
Like, I can go get a $10 million player, buy this guy out, and we're still comfortably under the cap. I say this optimistically, but with a bit of caution. If done properly, okay? You trade the right pieces, you buy out the right pieces as you needed, you go aggressive in free agency towards the right players. No more Comfers, no more Copps, no more Schrotts. I understand all that. But you get a Rantanen, you get a Marner, probably not multiple. You're able to go get that left-handed D that you've been coveting. Call it a Gavrikov, or I think I saw the name Kovacevic flying around.
Oh, yeah.
You can turn this around maybe faster than we thought, because again, that is a gigantic salary cap increase. And again, I would argue there is no team better positioned to capitalize on this than the Detroit Red Wings. You don't want to be rebuilding and maybe a fringy playoff team for 3-4 more years. Okay, there is a way out of this, but it is Vegas style aggression. Your young core is established and looking elite. Everything around them is the problem with this team. You can completely overhaul that in the next year and a half and come out the other end in the Tampa, Toronto, Florida tier, not the Ottawa, Buffalo, Montreal tier.
You know how many other teams are also thinking that as well?
Every one of them, because they're all getting the same salary cap room. Again, the big distinction here is Larkin, Raymond, Seider. That is the difference between the Red Wings and these other teams, because a lot of these teams, their superstars are due up for contracts in the next couple years, or they don't have that caliber of player and they got to go find them.
All I can think about right now is the meme of the guy rubbing his hands, licking his lips behind the tree, and the GM's being like, how can I overpay for another bottom to middle 6'4"?
That's the thing. If the Red Wings spend this cap space that they're going to have and all this surplus value on more Schrotts, Copps, and Comfers, everything I'm saying is rendered moot.
But they can, I can't believe I'm saying this, but you can even afford another middle pair overpay or depth overpay and still afford the guys you're talking about.
No, I agree.
Because this is such a colossal jump. This is such an atypical time. I don't know if this is going to happen again in this generation of hockey players. So you have to.
This is like when your parents gave you $20 when you were 10 years old and you thought you could go buy a Bugatti. Every single GM is going to offer, if Mikko Rantanen plays well into the playoffs, every GM is going to offer him $1 bajillion.
Can I do some math on that first?
No, I said bajillion. That's,
okay, yeah, that's
my.
fair enough.
I ran the numbers. That's.
It's actually bajillion. Cool. I just wasn't sure about the decimal places.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's no rounding error there.
Okay.
I guess my ultimate point on this is nobody in the NHL, even the elite teams forever and ever, would disagree that in order to be an elite team in the NHL, you need some luck. You need to win a draft lottery. If you're Tampa, you need a second-round pick like a Kucherov to turn into a superstar.
You look like Detroit with Johansson. Go on.
Yeah. But you look at the Red Wings rebuild. Any luck in the draft lottery? None. They got severe negative value out of the draft lottery. They drafted well, but
you can argue that being pushed down to 4th was actually lucky for Raymond that one year.
But they did not get any draft lottery luck, so they didn't get that franchise #1 overall pick. Do they have any non-first rounders that look like they're going to turn into superstars? Nope. A couple really good players coming out of it, but superstars, top line guys? No. But the Red Wings have finally got some luck in a big way. You can look at the superstar level jump from Lucas Raymond this year and go, okay, we knew he was going to be good, but this could be the break. Make the same case for Edvinsson. Them signing Seider, Raymond, and Larkin to the contracts they did right before all this news about, oh my God, look at all this cap space, is the break they needed. Because if this information had broken, call it 8 months ago, how many millions are each of those contracts up, right? If you're Lucas Raymond, you're sitting there going, I'm not taking 8. Look at that cap. My percentage is now 9.5, 10.
I honestly think
with probably still good value.
You can argue across the 3 contracts, like another up to 10 million. I don't know. Is it $10 million? Doesn't sound insane to me.
Yeah.
He finishes the season the way he's going. In the new cap, he's at least $12 million.
Exactly. This was the break the Red Wings needed. The fact that it coincided towards the end of a lot of their problem contracts, I'm just saying Red Wings fans, us included, have been the biggest whiners of, we've got no luck. What are we supposed to do? We've had no luck. What are we supposed to do? Here it is. Now it's on Yzerman to take all this infinity cap space with the rise in the cap and the value on those 3 contracts and the problem contracts expiring and do something valuable with it. I mean this. This is the opportunity within the next 2 years. If the Red Wings do not come out of this with another superstar level forward, it's a gigantic missed opportunity because this is almost too good of a circumstance for them to be true.
One benefit of this as well is, and I know Toronto is part of this list, but I'm excluding them for obvious reasons. Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, they all make their revenue in Canadian dollars. And right now the dollar is at horrific levels in compared to the USD. So those teams could spend the cap, but it's going to be far more difficult for them to get there. Obviously, Montreal, again, are probably funding 4 other teams' salary caps, but
Toronto too, MLSEs. The telecoms in Canada own the Leafs, so
yeah, but it could add some unwillingness. Ottawa being a prime team for this example to spend that much money in American dollars.
So some relative numbers here with Rantanen, which is the name that a lot of people are thinking about, and Brad referenced. Rantanen was apparently offered somewhere around the Panarin contract. So if you take the percent of the cap when Panarin signed his deal, it is worth $13.642857 million under the 2025-2026 salary cap. We talk about Rantanen as a $14+ million player.
If you go worth mentioning on that number too, that is the first year of that cap jump. With the projections for the 2 years after that, those are cap jumps that did not happen after Panarin signed his contract.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. You get surplus value over time, but not to that degree. And to Brad's point, 2 years later, when the cap is supposed to be like $113 million, the Panarin contract percentage of cap hit is 16.215 almost.
So you could almost argue if you want a Marner or Rantanen level player, 14 mil's a bargain. Within 2 years.
You could start the number with 15 and justify it mathematically. You then get into, do you drop that on a winger versus a center, but is there a center available kind of thing? That's a whole different story.
That's another argument. What's your flavor, Marner or Rantanen or whoever's out there? Sure.
But like, I don't know if this is sounding at all muted, it's because it's early in the morning. Like Brad, as much as Brad can be dramatic and short and ugly and stupid and just honestly really annoying, he's correct. Like this is so, I do this to myself. This is why people think I'm a bully, because I do this on air and you guys do it off air.
I was literally about to shove you in a locker, but you may continue.
Yeah. Thanks, Evan. Like this is a colossal win for Detroit. Yes, that it's happening. It's happening to everyone. I get it. But Detroit is positioned as well as they possibly could have asked for. What's the worst thing on their roster where they're going to have to pay someone when this comes up? DeBrincat comes up in 2 seasons after this one, so you're going to have to pay him more. He already makes almost 8. Like that jump is
Edvinsson.
Yeah.
Edvinsson's going to get a lot of money on his next contract.
And what I'm going to point to is Edvinsson, like they're going to point to Seider and they're going to point to internal cap and they're going to say, yeah, you're going to be higher, but not by that much. And it's a points-driven league and points dictate a lot of how much your number goes up in terms of your cap hit. So not that Edvinsson doesn't produce, but he's not, prime Erik Karlsson out there. I think Detroit, like the worst case scenarios for them they've done nothing but inspire confidence that they'll be able to bring those in well in line. And they've set, it's not like they're using one player as an internal ceiling. They have a whole core. They're going to say, what, you want to make $4 million more than Lucas Raymond?
I mean, when they get Mitch Marner at 15 mil, though,
that's going to change things.
The Red Wings sign Mikko Rantanen or Mitch Marner. I'll do the Patreon exclusive for the entire next season.
Look at the
read
camera.
out the names.
Look at the camera.
Because you guys need to come back to Earth.
No, we're not saying it's likely.
Okay, Ryan needs to come back to Earth then.
Saying
I hate Earth. It's
you edit the podcast. You can put in whatever you want. I don't care. I'm saying what I'm saying now.
What I'm saying in regards to those two specifically, but this will apply the following summer to any potential superstars that are also coming available, is the Red Wings do not have the luxury to not be the highest bidder. They might choose a warmer market, a team that's higher up in the standings. That's fine. But if the highest bid for Mikko Rantanen is 15.3, call it, the Red Wings need to be 15.4. Like,
we've had this song and dance before, and the Red Wings have only lured true talent, DeBrincat, Kane, because they wanted to play there.
But it's churning now. Like, you see that
when the first one happens where the player has 12 contracts lined out in front and they take Detroit's, I will be on board.
Okay, you know what? I actually bringing myself back down to earth for a second, being completely like real here. Evan does have a good point. It's not likely that it's going to be Rantanen or Marner. What it's going to be is Connor McDavid.
I knew that was coming. I hate both of you. You both disgust me still.
Connor McDavid's contract should start with a 2, and the Red Wings should give it to him.
That's on the right side of the decimal point.
But no, I understand the Red Wings have not made the playoffs. Although that being said, if the Red Wings can sneak into the playoffs this year, that actually would go a long way to luring free agents to say, we are not joking around anymore. We are actually a team on the rise.
I think that's the one, selling point that they can finally add to their ammo, right? Like, you look at everything this team is doing, everything we've talked about with the young players, Dylan Larkin, obviously the face of this franchise, like, that's an enticing thing for free agents. Before, hey, you want to come play in Detroit? We got Thomas Vanek and Christopher N. How inspiring is that? I totally agree with you guys in that sense, but there's going to be every other team lining up for these true superstars, whether it's true or false, selling them on their franchise.
I need to steal a point that Down Goes Brown makes a lot because it's relevant here. Is this going to be an easy task for Steve Yzerman, even with all the cap space? No, it's going to be incredibly difficult. He's touted as one of the top GMs in the league. Prove it. This is his moment to prove it. Lure these free agents. Make the trade. You are at a moment in time where you are so well positioned, you don't have an excuse. Is Detroit the New York market? The Anaheim market, the Florida market? No, it is not. Is it a historic franchise on the rise with infinity cap space to pay anybody anything they want? Absolutely. There are reasons you should want to come to the Detroit Red Wings right now. They are not the dumpster diving bottom of the league anymore. Even, hell, the city of Detroit is on the rise, much like the team. It is not the meme joke of a city it was 20 years ago. Everybody who's signed in Detroit, DeBrincat, Kane recently, raving reviews about living here, love it here. I'm sorry. I understand it's more likely that these players do not come to Detroit because of the competition. You want to win a Stanley Cup? You have to win some of these negotiations. Again, they might never come to market. The answer might come in trade. The answer might come next summer. I don't know when it is, but we have been begging for a break, for some luck, forever. Here it is. Time to capitalize. And time, I don't mean you have like 4 months. This summer, next summer, whatever. But we ain't in a 3 to 4 year window to make this move anymore.
And if there's one thing through the painful, like middling part of this rebuild that I think Steve Yzerman is exceptionally right about, is that this roster can do more than it was given credit for. And we're seeing that. Like when you see people who were upset when they went on the win streak because they're like, great, now we're going to draft 11th again and it's all going to be meaningless. Right, but you look at how Larkin's playing, look at how Raymond's playing, look at how Seider's playing,
Oh
look how
shoot,
DeBrincat's playing.
we draft Zeev Booyam.
Oh, I wish, man. Look how Edvinsson's playing. This team can't tank. There are too many good to elite players on this team to tank. You can't do it. You can't without stripping it down. And why would you when you have it locked in? And then one thing I'll add to Brad's point there is it's not just signings. You now can also make the uncomfortable move of you give up assets to bring in a guy and, you know, not have to have someone retain on him, and you pay a bunch of money on the salary. Miller Pettersson, the EP40, not DP, whatever his name is.
Not P3. Although he might be a free agent target. Just saying.
Like that's the poster boy of it right now. Makes a lot of money, probably overpaid with how he's playing right now.
Probably overpaid.
Definitely overpaid. I can only piss Evan off so much in one episode. He's going to hit me. But you can afford to do so on the cap side. So it's just about what you're giving up in terms of assets. So it is like, is this winning the draft lottery and getting McKenna? No. But it's about as good as you can ask for within what's possible in the NHL. We are not done that discussion.
Nothing
there.
gets us fired up quite like talking about the salary cap.
Oh, yeah. See, you really want this gone, Evan? You really want this gone?
We're going to find out in 3 years if I'm right or wrong.
I think you're right about in 3 years, some teams aren't going to be spending to the cap. So it's going to be like we both won.
I refuse that. It's scorched earth. It's 0 or 1 here.
No ties. That's just not America.
Yeah.
One other thing the Red Wings need to be looking at when we say it might not happen this summer is what teams might enter a rebuild and look for future assets because they're going to need them. And do they have superstar players, and are they a reasonable cap hit? David Pastrnak, as you will.
I don't know why I initially thought of JT Miller, but maybe it's talking about all the PDs.
Yeah. I don't think it's impossible with Pasta.
I don't think so, because Boston, he will be their most valuable trade chip if they decide that it's time to tear it down. And I mean, look at the standings right now. They're looking up at the Detroit Red Wings points percentage-wise.
Yeah.
Points percentage-wise. Just saying.
Okay. Actually, standings. We didn't even do the standings update right now. Detroit won both of their games. Everyone else is winning, annoyingly. You have the New York Islanders, who are the latest entrant into the 8-2 in their last 10 club. So Detroit is still the second team outside of the wild card, only 1 point back. Tampa has a game in hand. They're 2 points back of Columbus on equal games played, but Detroit has a regulation win tiebreak. Boston is ahead of Detroit based on points, but not points percentage. Detroit has 2 games in hand. And the Islanders are 1 game in hand on Detroit, 2 points back, but Detroit has a tiebreak. So everyone keeps winning.
I want to point out one thing. I know it's unlikely, and I'm not saying anybody should get their hopes up for this, but Ryan, could you please do the math on the Atlantic Division 3 spot versus where the Red Wings are?
It's the Ottawa Senators, 52 games played, same as Detroit, 3 points up, and equal regulation wins.
I'm not saying it's likely. I'm just saying it's not impossible.
I would... If the Red Wings can't play the Leafs in the first round, please let it be Ottawa.
It's a 0-win situation or it's a 0-lose situation, I should say, for whoever's playing the Leafs, yeah.
A battle of Ontario in the first round with Ottawa looking for something to prove. Oh, man, that would be must-watch TV if it can't be Detroit.
Yeah, if it's not us, what I look for in playoff series is blood.
Yeah, violence.
And that would do it.
Okay, the trades in the NHL, which most other episodes would be their own topic. We're going to skate past this one for now, but the first one that technically happened was Joel Farabee and Morgan Frost going to Calgary in exchange for Andrei Kuzmenko, Jacob Pelletier, a 2025 second, and a 2028 seventh to the Flyers. Kuzmenko going to play with Michkov.
I'm sure Tortorella is super excited.
The video of them screaming at each other on the bench, I immediately texted. I was like, yeah, Torts is on a clock now.
Oh, yeah. Everybody makes the shelf life jokes. The expiration date's coming. You can see it.
But the first of the Vancouver trades that everyone was waiting for, JT Miller is the odd man out. They send him back to the New York Rangers. It's Miller, Brandstrom, and Jackson Dorrington for Philip Hedl, Victor Mancini, and a 2025 first-round pick.
Everybody's saying the Canucks got fleeced on this. I love that trade for them. Not necessarily because of the return, although
top 13 protected first round pick, I should say.
This year, and then it goes to unprotected the following year.
Yeah.
With where the Rangers are at age-wise, man, if I'm a Canucks fan, I'm almost hoping that it gets
overprotected it.
Yeah, I kind of hope it gets kicked down the road if I'm a Canucks fan. But here's the thing. Look at Miller's age in his contract. I think them just getting out from that contract long-term is probably a win for them. The fact that they got a first and Hedl, I think this is a win for Canucks. I know I'm heavily in the minority on this one because, don't get me wrong, Miller is an elite player. And to a team like the Rangers, whose cup window is now, I know they're not even in a playoff spot, but look at the age of that roster. It's now. Because if it ain't now, it's not for a long time. I don't get this trade all that much from the Rangers' standpoint. I mean, I get it. I don't agree with it. But I think Vancouver did pretty well here, given the circumstances.
But does the contract not matter less now with the cap increases?
No, it absolutely doesn't. But what I'd be more concerned about, obviously I'm concerned about the contract a little bit, is the production drop-off. Miller's not young. Like, look at his age. He's right at this is usually where guys fall off the cliff age.
But higher end, plays a premium position. He's a little bit of Bruce Banner when he's getting kind of angry all the time. And that's a big part of why.
And the Rangers have such a stable dressing room to handle something like that.
Because Chad is in for a tough ride.
First he gets dragged by everyone in hockey media and then Rangers fans, and then now here comes JT Miller. Oh my God.
It's going to be Evan stuffing me and Brad in a locker repeatedly. I understand it from that point. And a big part of it is, what were they going to do with that first round pick?
Well, now this is where I don't like what Vancouver did.
They immediately turned it around and traded a first, Vincent Desharnais, Danton Heinen, and Melvin Fernstrom for Marcus Pettersson from the Pittsburgh Penguins and Drew O'Connor.
What's Marcus Pettersson's contract status, Ryan?
Marcus Pettersson is an expiring UFA.
So a first-round pick and a useful player in Danton Heinen plus some filler for a rental for a team that as of right now is not likely to make the playoffs. And even if they get in, is cannon fodder for the Stars and the Oilers and whoever they end up playing. My God. Okay, first of all, I said this about Doug Armstrong in St. Louis. I have to say this about Rutherford and Vancouver. Damn, do I respect how aggressive this guy is.
And Alvin, who's under Rutherford, but Rutherford's the one.
He's making the decisions, let's be honest here. I love this, man, where he just says, screw it, I'm doing it. And then he goes out and does a bunch of weird shit, and everybody's like, wow, that was entertaining. It's not good.
You think Rutherford knows what a meme is? Because I'm pretty sure this is just a meme.
It's not a meme, guys. He's restocking Pittsburgh's cupboard after all. It's just after he left the organization.
Double agent.
That's right.
I love that theory.
It's crazy to me to think Vancouver was essentially a Demko injury away from being a true contender last year to now whatever is going on now.
Is Demko even going to stay in Vancouver? You don't know.
Who knows? Could be gone next week. Could be gone today. Who knows?
Pettersson's due a raise. You have to think they're going to be the ones to pay him based on what they gave up. That's right. Yeah. Good. You know, the one.
Pettersson.
Marcus.
Okay.
MPD. We're just making this complicated on purpose. So, like, I get it. Vancouver was in a thankless position. We talked about it last episode. It's a failure of an organization to even let it get to that much of a fever pitch. And so they were screwed from the start. Because if you could have traded JT Miller without the drama, you could have gotten more. I don't understand the flip into Pettersson. I understand how they got there. Wholeheartedly disagree. Do agree with Brad, though, that it is incredible content. Canucks fans are going to be on bated breath for a long time here, and they have to hope that the team goes on a run, not just for the rest of this year, but beyond, because you need to make sure that you don't lose Quinn Hughes, you don't lose Demko. That Pettersson now with JT Miller gone, that's a lot of pressure on the guy.
Which one? It's like the Sedins where they just wear different jerseys.
Elias Pettersson 40.
Okay, yep.
And, you know, is there talk about him someone mentioned to me, like, was he prepared for the season? Did he come in with the right mentality, fitness for the season? Is that why JT Miller was upset? Like, he has to show up. It is, believe it or not, it's going to be dramatic in Vancouver for a little while. And then there's other trades as well. The San Jose Sharks traded Michael Granlund and Cody Ceci for a 2025 first and a 2025 third. The Sharks will get a third-round pick in the 2025 draft if the Stars make the Stanley Cup final. Otherwise, the Sharks will receive a fourth in the 2025 draft that originally belonged to the Jets. So that's another trade that happened. There's a lot of moving parts here.
Speaking of teams that might have to go into a rebuild soon, circling back to Vancouver,
man,
Red Wings have a hole at lefty. Just throwing that out there.
There's like, I want to sit here.
Does Cody Ceci shoot left or right? I can't tell what Brad's trying to make.
Quinn Hughes, Evan.
Oh, God.
Quinn Hughes.
Basically the same player.
Do you think Brad was advocating for Cody Ceci?
I don't know anymore. After this episode, I don't know what either of you think.
That's good. You're not the only enigma on this show.
Are they a top 10 player in the NHL? I will be advocating for them.
I would put Cody Ceci at a firm 12. I think.
Yeah, just outside of the range. That's too low for the Red Wings right now.
How's Cody Ceci been involved in a couple trades in the past little while now? Okay, this is getting ridiculous. We're going to take a quick break, and when we're back, we're going to jump into overtime.
We're going to overtime.
Overtime is brought to you by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/wingwheelpodcast if you want to support the show. The bonus overtime episodes, which often also include bloopers and outtakes from the main show. We have some good ones from this one. I'm going to try to fit in there.
We could do an entire bonus episode on today's outtakes.
You also get access to our Patreon exclusive Discord. Additionally, you're automatically entered into all of our giveaways, and you have an opportunity to enter to a giveaway where we give away 2 tickets to every Detroit Red Wings home game, all of them going directly to our Patreon supporters. So again, patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. Cannot thank you all enough. The support has been incredible. It allows us to do everything that we do. All right, questions from our patrons. This might be a fast one. The majority going to the bonus episode. 155 Taters says, with all the almost wild card bubble teams playing at good to elite levels, is it time to no longer use the term mid-off to describe this year's race?
I was actually thinking that this has turned into a very good, very entertaining race.
EDP Red Wings says, with the team playing so well, do you make a move at the deadline? I say no, ride with this group, bring more prospects in next season, and add summer free agents. Love to hear your thoughts.
Depends on the context. Are you trading for a rental? No, absolutely not. Do the Red Wings have any pieces right now that I would call valuable enough to justify taking them off the roster for the race? I would also say no. I think they've, like, best case scenario, you get a second round pick maybe for Alex Lyon. I don't think that's worth taking him out of this run right now. If EP40 is still available, yeah, that's the type of trade they should still absolutely make. But no, it's any trade is still long-term vision in mind only.
I also will say there's very few versions of the Red Wings who are on run hots where I'm like, no, ride with this crew. But unless it's a deal where it does help long-term, like Brad said, I agree with EDP Red Wing here. Ride with this crew. This is a good vibe right now. Mind you, like, if you have an opportunity to boost the scoring and it helps long-term, like, you're going to do it.
Yeah, again, Pettersson, Cousins, pick a player. Those guys are all still on the table. Like, you're not ruling that out just because of the circumstances of this season.
But I am now off of my train from earlier in the year of sell a goalie to get something, because you don't take away something like that from these guys in the room. They deserve to see this through.
Now, if someone's sitting there and saying, we'll give you a first for Alex Lyon,
then
yeah, you kind of got to do it.
Then Sebastian, come on down, because
yeah, but outside of that unlikely possibility, no, yeah, you're not selling off for anything other than a first round pick.
Cody Stark says, do you guys feel like Mo Seider takes too much time to make a pass when he's QBing the power play, or just setting someone up with the 1T? Almost seems like he takes an extra second to make sure he rotates his body and gets his hand right before he sends it into the right spot. I get it sometimes, but sometimes I wish it was a little quicker. I see this as, like, I'm not saying it's incorrect, because I think there are times when Seider takes it an extra beat, but that's just like there's just so much human to move around, right? Like, he's just so big.
But even at that point, this is the difference between a great offensive defenseman like Mo Seider and an elite offensive defenseman like Quinn Hughes, right? Like, nobody's ever expecting that level of offense out of Mo Seider, and little things like that are the difference between him on a power play versus Makar, Hughes, Carlson, etc.
Listening to Ryan Hannon in the shower says, with Lombardi injured, I can't be the only one that's noticed how Grand Rapids offense has taken a hit. Know that Soderblom and Shine are both in Detroit right now, but the Griffins scoring had a massive drop off as soon as Amadeus got injured. Not that I'm worried or anything, but I don't think it's nothing. Yeah, you're completely correct. And another shutout loss last night, I believe, in the Shine being up and Soderblom being up. Like, yeah, they're down the line of players for Detroit, but they're massive players for the Griffins. So you got to work around that in the AHL, though. Like, that's the reality of the game.
We need Soderblom in Detroit more than we need him in Grand Rapids. That's the unfortunate reality of the situation. And it sucks. And obviously we feel bad for the Griffins and all the Grand Rapids fans who go to the games, but that's the life of an AHL team. If your NHL team isn't healthy or doesn't need the boost, then the AHL team's sitting pretty, but it's the way of the world.
So I don't think you're ringing any alarm bells because you understand where the ailment's coming from, but you do. If they want to do something, they're going to have to figure it out. Tim Peel's Hot Mic says, watching the deceptiveness and puck control grow in Raymond's game this season has been so exciting, and sources indicate that Sam Montembeault is still sliding to his left. Am I crazy for seeing a little bit of Euro twins in Lucas?
No, it's absolutely there. To that degree, maybe not.
Not yet.
But again, Raymond's never been an elite skater, and if you're an undersized winger who's not an elite skater, you better be good with the puck and you better be deceptive. Again, I'm not saying it's a one-to-one comparison, but if you look at what Marner and Kucherov do, that's what Raymond has to do. And we are starting to see quite a bit of those traits out of Raymond. So will he get to their level? Almost certainly not, but maybe.
Hockeytown Racing Academy and Dylan Larkin-Zana both have similar voting related comments here. So first one is, will Marco Kasper get Calder votes? I think he should, especially with what he's done since we moved to the top line. And the second one is, I hate to get ahead of ourselves here, but let's say we make the playoffs. McClellan is a shoo-in for the Jack Adams Award, right?
He'd have to be in consideration. Now, there's a lot of teams overperforming expectations this year.
Spencer Carberry.
I was going to say, I don't see how Carberry doesn't win it this year, but
McClellan he's in that race.
He's probably on the ballot. I could see Kasper getting some down the ballot votes, like some fifth place votes maybe, but this is a strong Calder class. It's not an easy one to break in. Like, I don't think Michkov's a finalist right now. Like, your finalists are probably Hudson, Wolf, and Celebrini. And man, Kasper's not close to any of those guys yet.
Is Hudson the third best defensive player of those three?
Well, he can't be.
Actually, legitimately, the correct answer is yes. Yeah. He is the weakest.
Well, he can't be more defensive than Dustin Wolf.
No, of course not. But he should be more than Celebrini.
I don't know if he is.
Celebrini is an elite 200-foot player already, and the underlyings kind of speak to it, especially with the context of he's playing on the San Jose Sharks.
Okay, we don't hold it against him. We're going to wrap up this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast. We're going to be back with you midweek. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Again, this is recording before the Vancouver game, so we'll see how this all ages, but the vibes are good right now, and we're, same as me and Evan last episode, we're embracing it. To all of our listeners, new and old, thank you so much for tuning in. Welcome to the show, or I'm glad for those of you who have been listening for a long time that you get these good win streaks now. 5-game win streaks feels nice to say. It's happening more often now. To all of our Patreon supporters, we could not do the show without you. You know, the heart and soul of this. Patreon.com/WingedWheel if you want to go the extra mile and support the show. And if you want to support us, but Patreon's not for you, you can leave a rating and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the thumbs up, the stars, review, whatever. It really does make a big difference. Tell a friend about the show. And to our name level supporters on Patreon, we can't thank you enough. Arjun Shanker, Yves Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Akefer, THL Champ, Samuel Soderholm, Icon, Alexander Hansen, Ghost of OSBP, Glenn, Brabham, Sea Lion, Matthew M. Rice, Adam Rose, Adam Zuiza, Admiral Matt S. of the Cheesebag Navy, Alex Toger, Asher Killian, Beer League Legend, Best James Bond, Bingo Bango, Brett Kokesh, Carl Brutinen Aluski, Carl Provy, CB55, Citizen High Five, Clip Clop Nene, Connor Scovey, Craig Kibble, Denny's Gamer Girl, Derek Enstam, Seider, Dickens, formerly Marlon Winchester, DJ Denton, Eric Hill, Give Blood Fight Probert, Goose Looney's Drinking Club, Grand Rapids Girly, Hatrick Sandine Pelika, Hockeytown Matt, Hassam Al-Qassem, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, James McLean, aka Jambo, Jeff Pridemore, John Ingalls, Jonathan Miller, Kaylin Wood, Kasper, The Friendly Post, Lunchbox, Mark Hernandez, Marty, Matt Keeler, Matt McKay, Michael Udland, Mr. Kuzi. Now I have to learn how to click on a Macintosh. R.A., Raptor Kitchen, Riley Enright, Robert Smith, Roy Donk, Ryan Britt, Scott Martin, Skeletor, Steve the Liability, Stephen Ordeleb, That's What I Appreciate About You, Wallman's Elite Dancing D, Iser Plan Stan, Aaron Hudson, General Andy Bohanna, The Cheesebag Army, Sam Bankson, A. Aaron, A.B., All Motor No Hands, Ann Stanislavski, Bellingham Acid Balls, Bex, C.E. Hayes, Chimkim Nutkits, Commander Ben Baron, The Cheesebag Space Force, Connor Layton, and Corey Prida, Darren Fick, Datsukes Dangleberries, Deep In, Seider, Doctor Following Up on Your Shin Extensions, Dylan Larkin Trade Sacrifice, DeLucas Larkmond, Eric Nance, Evan Beckner, Gene Sullivan, Grepsky, Griffey Boy, Jake Stats by Pastor Jake, Their God's Choice, James Pridemore, Jeremiah Adobo, Jim, JM Rhapsody, Joey Jojo Shabadoo, Josh Yelton, Chaotic Monkey, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Larkin's Loyal Lemming, Linda Hull, Lonnie Zone, Lucas Raymond, Major Hole, Mitch Minier, Ophelia, As Good As It Gets, Ryan M, Sandy P, Right Hand D, Steven, That Other Guy, The Hodag, The Hat 123, Trent Thorough, your second favorite patron. Thank you all so very much. We'll talk to you midweek.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to visit wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you'll find links to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find ways to support the show, like Patreon, official podcast merchandise, and more. And don't forget to follow us on X at Winged Wheel Pod, at Ryan Hanna, WWP, at Brad Crisco, and at Hockeytown Evan, as well as Winged Wheel Podcast on Instagram.